Hello, I'm the Bunnyman.
And I'm Crazy Suzzy.
And we are in the Eyes of Terror. And tonight's movie is Yellow Brick Road. I love this movie. Crazy Suzzy hates it. So
it just drones on for me.
So this sort of ends up our, oddly enough, like, outdoorsy themed movie set for September. And that was more of an accident. We were sort of doing back catalog, and I was like, we're just going to do outdoorsy theme.
I'm one that's more of a stickler for themes, and he's just kind of like, whatever.
Yeah, well, themes have a place. We try to do the theming stuff, and some of the movies that we do are harder to do in themes, so... But all these revolve about the great outdoors. So we end up with this one with a hiking movie. A hiking that gone wrong. And no, this is not The Wizard of Oz, if you wanted to know. So you want to do what are we drinking? In your case, what are you eating? Crackers.
Quackers.
The nosiest food group.
Luna's having quackers.
So I am drinking Blind Pirate Blood Orange IPA. It's by Monday Night Brewing out of Atlanta, Georgia. It's ale prepared with blood oranges, 12 fluid ounces. Net alcohol 7.4 by volume. Juicy caramel citrus is what it says. And that's pretty much it. Just fair warning, I'm not an IPA drinker. So let's just give it a taste. It smells like blood oranges. Definitely an IPA. But it's not super bad. It's like a lot of IPAs. I don't like IPAs because of the major hop in the front. But this one has a major, like, almost like a piney hop to it. But it mixes really well with the blood orange. It's probably Cascadian hops, if I have to guess. You know, sniff it. You smell the pininess to it?
It reminds me of something.
I actually give this a 3.5. I like the front taste. I don't care for, like, the aftertaste, which is just that piney type hop. That's one reason why I don't like IPAs. But I would drink this more or less during the summer. And you're drinking your classic Diet Dr. Pepper. I like the design on this can. The only issue I have, and just the kerning. The kerning is atrocious. It starts running into each other. My only big complaint. Like ties with oranges and swords and stuff. It's a fun design. I've had other stuff by this company. It's pretty good, and they all have that fun design to it. Anyway, back into the movie.
Yellow Brick Road, 2010. It's rated R. This is not a film that's suitable for children. At all. There's a lot of violence, gore, unsuitable language. It's not recommended for children of any age.
I would also say if you have like issues with audio, because this is very audio heavy as a film, that if you have like audio issues, like you can't handle certain audio, like scratching records, ambience sort of noises, this is not a movie for you. Just pointing something out. It heavily revolves around that. It would get annoying to somebody who is very sensitive to audio.
Maybe that's part of my annoyance with it, because I have a sensory disorder, so I don't know, it's just, it seems to just really drone on and drag on to me.
Okay, well, you want to get into the IMDb and we'll talk about it?
It is 1 hour and 38 minutes long. It's listed as a horror thriller. IMDb gives it a 4.8 out of 10, which is pretty high. The directors are Jesse Holland and Andy Mitton. The cast are Michael Laurino. He plays Teddy Barnes. Anessa Ramsey plays Melissa Barnes. Alex Draper plays Walter Myrick. Cassidy Freeman plays Eric Luger. Clark Freeman plays Daryl Luger. Tara Giordano plays Jill. Sam Elmore plays Cy Banbridge. Laura Heisler plays Liv McCann. Lee Wilkof plays the Usher. And Josh Collier plays the Ticket Boy. That's literally the entire cast. The budget for this film was $500,000. And this film was shot in Lancaster, New Hampshire. The premise of this film was 1940. The entire population of Friar, New Hampshire walked up a windy mountain trail, leaving everything behind. In 2008, the first official expedition into the wilderness attempts to solve the mystery of the lost citizens of Friar. I still have in my head, follow the yellow brick road.
Okay, so this is going to be a heavy on me, the Bunnyman, narration, because Crazy Suzzy hates this film so much she refused to take notes on it.
I did refuse. He forced me to watch it twice in the hopes that I would take the notes, and I still didn't do it.
Okay, and if you're looking for this movie used to be on Netflix. It isn't anymore. I actually bought a hard copy because I really do enjoy this movie, because there's a lot of things that are really done really well in this movie that I'll talk about at the end. Other than that, we'll get into it. So I'm going to be heavily narrating. I'm going to do the shield now. If you're interested in merch to support this podcast, we do have one on Redbubble. It's Eyes of Terror on Redbubble, and we have a whole slew of different type of product, different images and designs that I made. So you can support this podcast by buying our merch. And back into the movie.
I thought I had found it on somewhere else.
On the morning in 1940, the entire population of Friar, New Hampshire, walked north up an unmarked trail into the wilderness. Some were later found frozen to death. Others were mysteriously slaughtered. Most, however, were never found.
It's currently at Prime Video, so you can watch it on Prime for free. But, that's ever-changing.
Yeah. Among the classified records in this audio recording of a lone survivor conducted at an outset of investigation. So there was a recording by a lone survivor of what happened. Then we see pictures of a town. A male voice is talking, giving data. The survivor, all he says is he walked, he left, then on. At this point, the pictures showing through the credits become more gruesome as the man becomes more irritated. And then we get into modern day. A man walks into what looks like a hospital/school, goes to a very dirty window. The guy asks if he is here about Friar, New Hampshire, and that old road. He is asking for 2 forms of identification. The man then hands him over a case file including photos and the numbers. Then the man apologizes for the years of inconvenience to Mr. Barnes and wife, and then he tells them to enjoy his picture show. Then he disappears the only way that public servants know. And very few people actually know this, but if you're a public servant, you have at least a 5-hour class on how to disappear. At least. Sometimes more. It's a skill you'll learn over the years.
You think you're funny.
I think I'm sort of funny. Then we are in a living room with 3 other people. One name is Walter, who congratulates Barnes for becoming a teacher and then pouring a glass of wine. They sit around and start drinking, and Walter laments them leaving and says he doesn't know what he's going to do. Well, my first suggestion into getting some shoes that aren't Crocs, because he's wearing Crocs. Then Kenny Barnes goes, screw Walter's tenure and let's do another book. And Kenny's wife and Walter wonder if Kenny got the documents. To disbelief, he got the documents, which makes it real. So I guess they were looking to get this file for a long time, had a lot of issues with it. He just graduated from probably like grad school. The idea is let's go to this place and go check it out. and make a book. Then we hear a series of voicemails, such as the proposal has gone through, to the disliking of the mayor. Then we hear that the voices say, stay away, we are not going to talk to you, and stay out. Sort of ominous. Then after the realizations of how real this has got, they wonder if it's going to lead to disappointment. Next we are at a diner where Kenny makes a cringy toast declaring day 1, then gives a itinerary, and then we are introduced to the characters. Melissa Barnes, co-author, Point in the Field, Cy Banbridge, Forest Service, Daryl and Erin, Luger, Maps, Joe Bateman, intern and medic, and Walter, psychologist. So now we see all the who's who of this group of people. Kenny Barnes, an author / photographer, is the last one. Next, Walter starts doing psych evals on the timid Cy when we get a packing montage. Next, we are in Friar to use a GPS to find the trailhead, which happens to be the entrance to a local cinema, which Walter is not too happy, thinking that GPS is broken. The crew enters the cinema and they ask the counter and clerk if this is the trailhead, and then he insults them and everyone but Kenny, which he sees the concessions woman, which goes into the theater, which Kenny then follows. They have a conversation. Go find out Erin is jealous and not one of the angry ones, and it's jealous because they get to walk the road. Kenny's convinced there is no road. Liv is jealous. Liv then tells her about her grandfather who lived in the town before they walked. She shows Kenny the shredded Wizard of Oz film that was left in the projector when the townsfolk decided to walk. So the walking is what the townsfolk claim is just they all got up after watching the Wizard of Oz over and over and over and over again, convinced that they could go to this yellow brick road, find happiness or whatever at the end of it. So the town left on this walk. Liz bargains with Kenny about going with them, and will share where the trailhead is and all the information she knows, because she's the only one in town that's playing ball with this whole thing. Liz tells that she walked the first 100 yards of the trail, and that convinces Kenny that she knows about everything. Then they drive out to the trailhead. Kenny starts taking photos, start their walk into the woods. We see Walter recording Erin to see how her mental state is, a montage with them hiking, the rough terrain, and why didn't one person bring a machete? Because it is rough terrain. It's overgrown. They're like, so these are all supposed to be expert hikers and stuff like that, and they didn't obviously bring the right tools to do this hike. After a day of hiking the trail, they camp out. We start seeing some bonding over past accomplishments and the fears of animals and candy. When Melissa is handing out candy, a mysterious figure wearing an old-time hat shows up. The crew stops what they're doing, and then figure jumps out at them, and it's douchebag Daryl, one of the guys who's in part of the math team. He says that he found it while visiting the little boy's tree, and Teddy and the rest examine, not believing it's over 70 years old, since it looks almost new. And of course, it always looks new. All these things always look new. And Melissa and Teddy are overexcited, and they say they need to keep it safe, and Daryl insists on wearing it to the irritation of Erin.
What is it?
A hat.
Right.
It's basically an old This 70-year-old Fandora that looks like it just got out of the shop. No holes in it. It's perfect in every way. And I get the sense that I understand why, but at the same point, it just sort of irritates me at the same point, because at that time, everybody wore hats, so you would think there would be some fading. Just like sweat or something. The next day, Walter continues his interviews, and he's making sure that everybody is psychologically okay. They haven't changed. Melissa interviews Liv on the town, and she tells her that in the fall of 1940, Roosevelt is not paying attention to the Great North Woods, and people are losing hope, and the people are spending all of their time at the cinema. They start to see themselves as the Munchkins and wanting to go to the Emerald City. She also tells Melissa her grandfather didn't believe in the official reports and was shocked at the things they took with them, such as suits and hats, music, phonographs. As Melissa is reviewing the tape, Walter disbelieves Liv's story and thinks Teddy and Melissa are being fooled. Next, we see Daryl and Erin taking map quadrants when Erin starts getting annoyed about the hat. When the rest of the crew is resting, Jill brings the GPS to Teddy and points out it says they are in Guam. So we see at this point technology is starting to fail them and putting them in places that they're not supposed to. It sort of starts bringing up tensions within the small group of people. Teddy contacts the siblings to tell them the news, to much disbelief. Then as they started hiking, they started asking Jill, the intern, what is the new locations, such as Florence, Italy, Breakout, and Hoops and Hollers. So as they're walking, their different locations are constantly changing around the globe. The next day, the group starts hearing a wind-like sound, and they continue to annoy about the location, which at this time is now Melbourne. The following day, they hear geese interrupt the wind noise to much jubilation. Then it's silent. Then they start hearing an old-timey song playing in the distance, and some start humming, and everyone starts asking if they hear the music, which everyone says yes. Then we have a set of theories such as solar flares, magnetic magnetism, being punked by the FBI, collective hallucination. The people of Friar are in on this. The audio instruments are reading that the music is coming from the end of the road, and at this point they have found some remains of the previous walker. And then the instruments are buggy and are 5 days away from civilization without gear. That night, Teddy brings up that they should turn back under the direction of Walter. So Walter brings up that they should turn back, and as they're starting to settle into their demise, the music begins, and they ask about the music because none of the theories make sense. Liv brings up that was the music the walkers constantly listen to over and over. We start seeing how Daryl is dismissive and dislikes Jill, the intern, and calls her out on a theory which she thinks the music is an act of God, which everyone starts laughing at except Ted, who says the walkers believed it was a road to some god/wizard, and that they wanted to stop the war from coming. Daryl's being a really big douche. Walter brings up that they should leave because he is scared. He has no explanation for what is going on. Of course, the crew grows dismissive of Walter, concerned. The next day, Teddy is looking at his compass, which is unable to find true north. Then Daryl tells him to use northwest, which confuses Teddy because Erin said that the instruments were off. Daryl sort of confirms Teddy's theory, that there is a center of the road. We are treated to more interviews. This time, Liv. We are informed the music has been playing since the previous morning, and Liv is having an extremely hard time remembering the alphabet. We see Daryl and Erin are still taking coordinates, and we see that they are coming across another crossroad. That night, the music grows louder, and Teddy tries to make the best of it by dancing. The next morning, the music grows to a definite level and quits. Teddy is being interviewed. He is asked to talk gibberish, which he does, but to the chords of the music. Then Teddy breaks down, saying he misses the music, but Walter doesn't. Walter tells Teddy he is seeing a lot of memory loss, separations, and how they originally were at the beginning. Walter pushes to give up and go back because Teddy has a problem with going too far, and it's starting to scare Walter. He feels that they've done enough already. Next, Daryl is playing with some nightshade berries, which Cy points out is a bad berry, and Daryl starts acting childish. Then he brings out the liquor he brought. Next, we have a series of photos of the fire competition between Cy and Daryl, because he started playing with fire and who could get the biggest fire fastest. I did that in Boy Scouts. Things sort of turn south. We hear through a clutter of voices that something is there, no place like home. We see a frightened pic of Liv next. Liv wakes up next to Teddy and Melissa, and then informs she lied about her grandfather, but she didn't know, and she previously lived in Maine. She's not originally from Friar, but she did grow up in Friar. And she makes a anonymous statement about the walkers, that you should know all this, wondering why they walked. People who lived in Friar didn't wonder about it. If you live there, you understand, and it's not something you can write a book on. Next, we know Erin is sitting in the early morning, and the music starts back up louder than before. The feeling of defeat is on her face. The next morning, Walter informs Teddy that Jill's first memory is standing at the trailhead of the road. Then Walter asks, what direction today? And you get the hint that they're starting to lose their own identity. Start seeing the strain between Erin and Daryl, and a series of events happen, such as Erin dropping the sexton, and then Erin attacking Daryl's hat. Then Erin takes the hat, then Daryl tackles her, and then we get our first kill. He starts punching her, then takes a stone, tears it through her cheek. Then Daryl takes another stone and starts bashing her leg and then tearing it off. Then Daryl cuddles with it as Erin dies. Then Daryl runs off into the woods as the group watches on and are in shock of what happened. And the music is really loud and cheerful. Cy and Daryl then are tasked to bring back Daryl. Walter and Cy want to go back, and Jill is screaming to make the music stop. As Cy and Teddy are in the woods, Jill is trying to find the signal, while Melissa is freaking out on a tent pole. Liv goes to mark the body with a bright sweater. The music starts to scratch and stop. Cy and Teddy find Daryl, who thinks he did something wrong. They try to convince him to come out. They tell him they all thought about killing. No one is blaming him. Daryl gets himself up and agrees to be tied up. That night, they drag Daryl with them to camp. He starts pleading with Teddy to loosen him. As Teddy is reviewing his numbers he took, he confesses to Teddy that he can hear the people who walked in the music. Then he tells them the numbers don't add up and started to go backwards. They are more going forward, but they are less. At one point, they were 3 miles away from camp, and they couldn't see it. When Teddy said, he said, "Why didn't you say something?" And he answers, numbers on the yellow brick road are hard, and they make sense going forward, but not backwards, or side to side, because the land is like liquid. Then Daryl tells Teddy to look at the last page, which will take him to the end. Then Teddy suspiciously tears out the last page. Then the music starts to stop, and then starts to blare. Then it starts getting lower. So it changes, is now starting to change at very dramatic intervals. Then there was a silence where Cy said, "Please go away." Then, like an angry ex, the music came back 10 times worse, enough to make the land shake and tremble. It started, stopped, glitched, and then the crew continued to hike, covering their ears and falling down. Then they came to a massive brush pile where Erin was hung like a scarecrow. Daryl cracks up. Then Teddy climbs the brush pile. As Daryl breaks free, grabs the machete, and takes their vehicle, which is called the Argo, while Teddy sees a perfect path that leads to the end. They all start losing it more and more, and they look at the numbers. Cy says that they don't make sense since Jill starts to see her home. They agree about not having gear, which way to go. Cy wants to go west and points with his knife. He asks Teddy which way he wants to go. Of course he says north because he wants to go home with answers. While Cy makes a point of saying these questions never need to be asked. Melissa tries to consult Teddy, but only gives her an icy stare. Then she asks him to go south. Cy grabs Liv and says they are going west, with or without them. He points out Liv should never have come with them and doesn't deserve to die, and he's not part of their democracy. Then Walter states, observing what is going on, says that they need to split up the gear, and that's what they do. That night at this time, the music is background without saying anything. Cy and Liv go into the woods. Teddy says they should set a watch, which Melissa does, and it starts storming. And Teddy and Melissa get down, and Melissa asks Teddy to stay with her. And at that time, someone is screaming, "Where are you now?" The next morning, Teddy is in the entrance of the tent, while Melissa is still half asleep. She asks where Teddy is. He says, "Right here." She starts telling him about a dream she had where they got home and it wasn't there. It was gone, and the grass was black and the sky full of smoke, and she was there dead. So were all the other people. And she woke up and wondered if the road is their home now. Teddy looked guiltily and tries to say something that would comfort her. Then we hear a screaming and the tent shake, and we see that is Melissa realizing Teddy is gone. Teddy climbs the brush pile and sees the road. She hears Melissa, but is dismissive of her. Next we see Melissa and Walter walking together, with Jill in tow. Cy and Liv are together, and he is showing her some survival techniques. He gives her his ration and tells her he will catch a chipmunk to eat later. As they walk, Liv asks if they are going north, and Cy says no chance. Then we see Cy packing up, then he chucks the tent. During this time, Liv has 3 nightshade berries on her. Cy tells her he ate some once. It gets you high, but if you eat too many, you die. Also, you get a rash. With those words of warning, Liv eats one, then offers one to Cy, which he eats. Next, we see the Argo blazing through a field, and we go back to Cy and Liv high as a kite, rolling around the leaves, screaming how much they like the song. Liv wants to walk, which Cy dismisses and wants to touch her hair. Then they get up and walk, and they make jokes about squirrels, and Cy says, "I want to kiss you," and Liv shoots him down. Next, we are with Walter, Melissa, and Jill. Walter and Melissa are talking about past trips and the fate of her dog. The music gets louder, and they feel more and more of the of the effects of the music. Jill starting to talk to herself and going through her past. Also, Melissa and Walter forget about Jill and her well-being. Next, we are back with Liv and Cy. Liv points out that they're coming down hard and that they will feel like they've been walking forever. Liv points out they were destined to walk the path. He says she thinks everyone in town knows the trail is there, a way to get out, and that it understands you, which is the worst part, and it does. It's night. Jill and Walter are sitting around when Melissa brings out the candy, the candy bag. They dive in, and Jill wants seconds because she's starting to revert back to like a childhood, and they've been using the candy as treats. They dive in. Jill wants seconds when Melissa stops her and tells her they need to ration for later, and that night Jill gets the bag and eats the entire thing like a little kid. The next day, Melissa and Walter are walking ahead of Jill, who is constantly apologizing about eating all the candy because she was hungry. The path goes over a cliff, and Jill decides nonchalantly to just walk off of the edge. I give this a 4 out of 5. Teddy is now out by himself walking. Then Cy reveals to Liv that he's going to do something unspeakable. He has been thinking about it for miles. He tells her he thought about taking himself out, but if he starts cutting, he might get confused. Then he tells her to get the rope. Next, we have Walter and Melissa. So they get near a cave. Melissa tries to call Teddy, then throws the radio. Then they just sit there. Walter says the song is calling him out, which Melissa tells him not to leave her. Melissa questions why Walter never found anyone, and that they have been best friends for a long time. He reveals that he might die tomorrow. Then he says something about how little the trees were. Liv ties up Cy. He tells her he doesn't want to talk anymore. Just do it. The only request he has is she can't stab him because he doesn't want to die by a knife, and that he wants her to break his neck, then gives her the motivation to do it. As night closes and Walter stares at the sky while Liv finds the motivation, we get kill number 3. It's sort of a meh. It's like 2.5 is like eh. Next morning, Melissa finds...
But does she actually break his neck?
Yeah.
Doesn't it take her several times of
trying
to do it?
Yeah. Next morning, Melissa finds Walter dead and has a sign that says, "Watch tape." What she does, his motivation to kill number 4 himself, is he has seen too much, and it's time to click his heels and go home. And then she needs to stay with him, and then he seppukus himself by taking a knife into his stomach and answers his questions. When he slowly dies, the last thing he says sounds like... He says something and she can't really make it out, and she keeps rewinding the tape. Next we see Teddy by himself cradling the coordinates, which he then starts walking. Melissa, still at the cave, hears a radio. Thinking it's Teddy, she pleads to Teddy, which all he hears is static, to not leave her all alone, and she is trapped here, and that she would have gone with him that morning. Though Melissa hears a voice come from the cave, which tells her he is with her now. He asks if he's going to kill her, which the voice says yes, but with his leg damage, he might have a chance. Melissa asks for death, but does there have to be so much pain? Which the voice says yes. Then Daryl from the cave happily charges at her. Teddy is on the radio saying he heard her somehow. He tells her he is somewhere off the map. He is unable to read or understand the numbers. He is starting to think there is no end, but the hopes Melissa is at home somewhere warm and is able to live. At this time, Daryl, number 6, kills Melissa with a machete to the neck. 3 out of 5, it's okay, she is twitchy. Then Liv finds Gip Daryl, and she stabs him in the neck with Cy's knife. 4 out of 5 is animalistic. And in dire need, also finally, as the killing happened, Teddy tells her he hopes Walter and her are happy, that he doesn't want anyone to picture where he is, and that she will forget about him and go home. Next, we see a menacingly Liv smiling over the body of Daryl like she is broken from reality. Then we see like a white gloved hand take Melissa by the hair. Then Teddy drops the radio and gear and then lets the coordinates fly into the wind. The music starts. It's starting to scratch and getting louder as Teddy crawls. He ends up in front of the brick building where they started at Friar. At this time, Liv is starting to eat the poisonous berries. And this is where you should end the film. And you'll see why at the end. A man dressed in a cinema usher outfit comes out and meets him. And Teddy proceeds to talk, and the usher interrupts that he is talking very loudly. He tells the usher others are out there and needs to find them. The man says, "No, you don't," because he has seen it. And then Teddy asks about Melissa, if she's here at the end. The usher says, yes, she is at the end, but there are so many endings, which shock Teddy. Then the usher tells him to enjoy the show. As he enters, the usher yells at him to take his seat as the music gets louder. Then he sits down, and the counter ticks down as an alarm blares. Teddy is holding his ears, and we see briefly the original walkers have joined him in the theater. Then we hear Melissa's voice call to him. Then her dead eyes fill the screen saying, "This is our home," as Teddy screams. Tears of blood come from his eyes. 3.5 out of 5. The reason why I like it, it's really a psychological thriller. I feel like this is a cosmic horror done right. The music is a major actor in this film, which is very rare in a lot of films. It really starts to unsettle the entire movie, and it becomes a really huge focus. And we're starting to see how everybody is going insane as they progress through it. So we sort of know the ending, what happened to the actual walkers. I like the slow dive into insanity, and we see through the different interviews what is happening. The actors really carry this film. Sometimes it's flat, but other parts make up for it. This is one of the very few films that use nature as the major player, not just a hunting ground for the villain. Same with the music. I also like that they never got answers. Nothing made sense. It's a different film that isolates everyone from everything and from themselves. One of my favorite deaths was probably Jill. She just and just walked off of the cliff. The film also, that feeling of growing up in a really small town that you can't get out of, and it captures the feeling of trapped, which is the main sort of motivation for the walker. I also like it didn't use Daryl as the kill-all villain, and no supernatural ghosts or haunting as the villain. It was nature and themselves, and that the music just added to that insanity. Something I didn't like, it was mostly the ending. I felt the whole dream cinema thing, especially with using Melissa as a sort of like a scarecrow, and the smoke and fire was lame. But I did like the ghost town folks that flashed. It really should have ended with Liz just eating the berries, because we could all assume that everybody just dies on this road. There is no end. I know the filming had some issues, and we find out through the commentary that the usher and the clerk at the beginning are the same people, and it's also he's the manifestation of the evil of the land. Instead of using the ending where Melissa's a scarecrow and fire and telling him that he's now home, instead I would have used the townsfolk that flashed briefly that they would turn to him and smile, instead of seeing the Melissa character that the entire party was at the beginning of the trailhead and that Teddy had to watch everything that unfolded, what was going on, and then somehow, like the ushers like laughing and like welcome home or something like that, instead of what we had. I would preferably just ended at live though. Other things I would like to have seen is maybe using the usher's hand in another spot, just to sort of like push that he's the evil spirit of the land. Towards the end, that one hand is just sort of out of place. And then I liked it. What are your thoughts? If I could, tell me why you didn't like it.
I think they could have condensed it down and got the point across without just droning on and on.
Well, I mean, they were trying to use this like...
Part of it, I get the psychology of it, and part of it is to convey the eeriness and the insanity of the droning, but I think they took it too far. That's part of the reason I don't like it. It's too much.
What would you have liked to have seen?
As far as like the storyline and the plot and everything, I think it could have been explained better, and I don't think it needs to be drug on as long as it was.
So this is sort of where we differ in horror films. I like more meta stuff. I felt like they explained it to some extent. I don't know.
I definitely do think it droned on too long.
Yeah, I forgot how long is this film. It's like an hour or something.
It's an hour and 38 minutes.
I think a lot.
3/4 of the film is just them being trapped and hearing the music and them trying to figure out how to get to the trail. And it just feels like they're stuck there, and it's just that droning on.
See, and that's what I like about it, because it's not using like a Jason or a Daryl character killing. They are trapped in their, within that trail in themselves. I mean, they're stuck in their own sort of like hell that they created. And if you've ever been lost, that, that's a huge conveyance of that. So, and then the disassociation and stuff like that. I think a lot of the issues, and I'm not trying to speak for you, but I think because knowing you, because we've been together for almost a decade, is when I listen to drone music, you hate it.
Maybe it is the music. I have a sensory issue.
No, and I'm not saying that's bad, but this movie is definitely one of those, like, either you love it or hate it. This one movie there is no in between.
Mm-hmm.
People either love this movie or hate it. Or, like I said, they love it up to the point where Liv dies, and it's like the ending is the hugest letdown. So, I do apologize for this to some extent, because I think I did this in the middle of the night after a long day of work, and my notes somewhat didn't make any sense. But this movie is hard to explain.
Yeah. Normally I bridge the gap with the notes, but...
Well, no, but you have to admit, this movie is hard to explain because it relies so much on nuance.
I just couldn't... I couldn't do
it. But this movie relies so much on nuance. How they're acting and stuff like that. It's hard to explain all of that within notes. But I tried my best, because this is one movie that I feel like people would like that don't know a lot about it, that would like it. There's other people who are like, I'm glad you did this, because I try to watch this movie. I take, for instance, my brother who tried to watch Asylum of Darkness, which we did years ago, and he says he could not even watch that entire movie. So we do movies that people can't watch but want to sort of know what happens. So that's anecdotal. Sorry I didn't make a lot of jokes or anything like that, although I'm not a comedian. I tried to explain it as best as I could. I should never take notes, like, really, really tired. That's what happened, especially the end.
Yeah, it's not a good idea.
And I took these, like, about a year ago. Alright.
I believe that's all. Scare you later.
Bye.
Follow the YellowBrickRoad. Follow the YellowBrickRoad.